Why is the Constitution relevant today? Very rarely in human history has there been a society without a government. But what is government? One dictionary lists its first definition of government as such: a group of people who have the power to make and enforce laws for a country or area. Think about that for a second. Is that what you think of when you think about the government? First of all, who are these people who have such a great power? How did they get to power? Why do they have this power? And when did they get it? Government really exists because it forces the people it rules to do what it wants. Government naturally is an enemy to freedom. It has a tendency to grow and accumulate more power. Not only that, but the people who make up our government are easily tempted to abuse their power. They may not always have the interest of everyone when they make decisions. Many in government are likely there for self-centered reasons. If they were elected to join the government, they are tempted to do whatever they can to just get re-elected. If they weren't elected, they're likely to stick around until they die. Basically, government is made up of human beings, and human beings are far from perfect. Even the most beloved leaders in history had great flaws. Which brings me to the Founding Fathers, or Framers, as some people call them. They were the first leaders in the United States government who came up with the Constitution. These guys knew they weren't perfect, and because of that, they knew they should limit their power. In fact, the main purpose of the Constitution is to limit the power of the federal government. Article 1 spells out exactly what the United States Congress can do. If it's not there, they can't do it. Article 2 spells out exactly what the president and his or her staff can do. If it's not there, they can't do it. Article 3 spells out exactly what the Supreme Court can do. If it's not there, they can't do it. Are you noticing a pattern here? All three branches of government have power over each other so that each branch doesn't become too powerful. Article 4 outlines the relationship between each state and the others, as well as the relationship between the states and the federal government. Article 5 outlines how, if there's something you don't like about the Constitution, there's a way to change it. Article 6 forbids a religious test as a requirement for holding a governmental position, says that the United States was responsible for debts it owed from before, and establishes that federal laws and treaties that are constitutional are the supreme law of the land. Article 7 describes how the Constitution is ratified. But things really got groovy when a little later the Founding Fathers decided to add the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Whereas the original Constitution listed exactly what the federal government could and should do, the Bill of Rights protected the rights of every American, as well as the rights of the states. Rights like the freedom to say whatever you want, the freedom to practice whatever religion you want, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, freedom to petition the government if you have a problem with the government, the right to keep and bear arms, the right to not be tortured, the right to be judged by a jury of peers, even for certain civil trials, the right to not be locked up forever and to know why you're locked up, the right to have due process if accused of a crime in general, the right to have some privacy, and many others. The 9th and 10th Amendments need special mentioning here. The 9th Amendment says that the Bill of Rights were not a complete list, that just because a right isn't listed doesn't mean you don't have it. The 10th Amendment says that all rights not granted to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved to the states or the people. And even after the Bill of Rights, there were additional amendments that further protected the rights of individuals, like the 14th Amendment, which gave the right for equal protection under the law, and many other rights. If you really think about that, that means that there is a lot of stuff that American citizens have a right to do, and there is very little the federal government has a power to do. Until very recently, if the American government didn't agree with something in the Constitution, they would have to get 3/4 of the states to agree to change it. Nowadays, it seems that people just interpret the Constitution in any way they want to. Is the Constitution outdated? Perhaps small parts of it is, but that's what amendments are for. The majority of the Constitution is just as relevant today as it was 227 years ago. Why? Because the idea that a government is meant to have limited power is one of the most revolutionary and progressive ideas in history. The Founding Fathers knew that governments naturally grow in size and power. When this happens, the rights of the governed are at risk. What results is often a tyrannical government that only cares about power. So the Constitution's main purpose since its creation has been to limit government power, while simultaneously protecting individual rights. Liberty is perhaps the most progressive idea to ever exist. It's the idea that you should be able to do whatever you want to do, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. If you like having people boss you around and telling you what to do all the time, and then threatening to lock you up or kill you if you don't do what they ask, then perhaps the Constitution is not for you. But for those of you who like a little freedom, you should remember that you only have the Constitution to thank for that.